Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry I can't be with you today, but I'm going to lead you in a short presentation about blogging and social media. My name is Andy Lewis. I've been a teacher for 9 years. I've been working in my current school for 3 years now. Online, I tweet as I teach RE with other teachers, and as Talking Donkey RE, which is my student account. If you want to have a look later, all of the kind of things that I'm involved in online, I've put together on a website, mrlewis.re.co.uk, so you can have a little bit more about that. So, first of all, why do I blog professionally? Blogging has become really quite come to prominence in education, with even people like Michael Gove quoting from teachers' blogs in some of their speeches. I started doing it because I wanted to share some of my ideas, some of the things that I think work well in my classroom. I like to share with other professionals, and there's been a real movement towards this with things such as teach meets and even kind of virtual teach meets which have happened online, where no longer are teachers kind of closing their door and keeping everything to themselves. They are trying to learn from one another. Secondly, to ask for help, because however good you think you are at teaching, you can always be better. And there's so many times where I don't know where else to look. I might ask people in my school, but through my blog I can ask for help and guidance, and that's been really helpful. Particularly of late, I've been working on a few different projects, and I've had some really quite significant help from people such as Charlotte Vardy, who's helped me with my work on independent learners, and even people like Ian Gilbert who've read my blogs and given me advice, which has been great. It also helps me to reflect upon my practice, again back to this question about how can we be better. It's not that we're not good enough, and I think there's a brilliant quote from Dylan Williams on that. It's not about not being good enough, but it is really about how we can be even better at what we do. And just blogging sometimes gives me that release, that way of kind of bringing together my ideas in a somewhat kind of formal way, in some respects, informal in the other, but it just helps me to bring all of my thinking together. Why do I use Twitter professionally? And actually, Rhiannon, who's with you today, me and her got back in touch for years after doing our PhD together through using Twitter. I use it to connect and to network. I'm able, within a few clicks, to have access to a huge number of fellow professionals and people that are willing to listen to my ideas, willing to listen to my questions, and help me answer those sometimes difficult questions about our classroom practice. This whole idea of building a personal learning network, I think, is so vital. We have one in our own schools, but it might be as small as our department. I think for our teachers, when we can be on our own or with a very small group of people, it's working out where we can get help. You can be very fortunate and have a large number of professionals within your school, but sometimes you need to look beyond that and work out different areas of expertise. Maybe it is in, for example, coming to someone like myself who's got an expertise in doing a bit of blogging and social networking. There's lots of things I haven't got a clue about. Next year I take on the role of head of year, and I know there'll be different people I'll be asking. I've undergone taken on different projects to do with independent learning and excellence in education. And again, that's not an area I was had expertise in, so I went and asked different people to help me with that. Lastly is this whole idea of kind of engaging outside the classroom. We can get very used to what goes on in our own classroom. We can get very familiar with the practices of our own school. And sometimes we need to look beyond that to try and find new ways, new ideas that will help us to really become even better teachers. Also, I've managed to communicate with teachers outside of the UK, and again that brings a brilliant global dimension to the classroom. Certainly with teaching RE, you find that might be small little niches in the market. I've done some work with some Catholic teachers, RE teachers in America, and also in Australia as well, and that's been kind of a really amazing experience to kind of network with them too. So really getting on to what I actually do, I blog in a few places. the first blog that I started was Talking Donkey RE. And the reason I started to write this is because I believe so passionately that RE is something that is brilliant because it is in the news, because it is relevant, because it is topical. Rarely does a week go by when we don't have the opportunity to look at a particular story. And instead of throwing my lesson plans out the window every single lesson, although I do it from time to time, having the blog allowed me to write in an appropriate and simple way some of the key stories. That also is very useful for RE teachers. I know they've used it, and I was really pleased. Just last week, actually, it had its 100,000th viewer, which means someone somewhere is reading it, and I found it really useful. I've started to bring it in more and more to my teaching, and now it's become quite embedded into it. Quite often I'll have a homework, particularly at GCSE, where I will say go and read this particular article, or go and read this particular story. And when I put the story up there, I don't just write the story. I'm not a journalist. I'll pick some of the key bits of the story, linking them to our specifications, to our schemes of work, and actually I'll put a few reflective questions at the end. So sometimes I'll say to the students, go and write a summary and a reflection. They don't know perhaps what a reflection is, but it's answer the questions that I've given to you there. And it's built up a really big bank and resource, and it is quite popular with the students. Where did the name come from? I wanted something catchy that they would remember. They found it quite funny at first, until I asked them to go and find out who the talking donkey was. And first of all they came back with Shrek, and then eventually they found in the book of Numbers the donkey that God gave a voice to when he spoke to Balaam, and they quite all of a sudden get interested in their Old Testament theology and God making animals speak. So, you know, lots of lessons there. My professional blog is TDRE Boss, Talking Donkey RE and Boss, because I'm a massive fan of Bruce Springsteen, and I thought that was, you know, a good place to be in the classroom, just trying to be in control. That obviously is more for teachers, and that's something I've been doing for less time, but I do find incredibly useful. I also use blogs with students, and later on you'll be able to have a look at this presentation and click through some of these links. We've got one that I do with my GC class where they do creative writing. We sometimes get incredibly bogged down with doing exam practice, but creative writing is a brilliant opportunity for young people to write in RE. The blog kind of gives them that real genuine audience, and people can interact in a way they can't if they just write it on a bit of paper. My A-level students, both AS and A2, have been blogging this year. Every single student has taken it in turns to blog once, and that's going to be something we build upon. It is going to hopefully be useful for revision as well, and it just again helps them to write not just for the sake of the exam. My latest blog, which is brand new and there's no posts on it yet, and in fact I've just launched it today to the AS students. We find that it's sometimes a bit of an odd period of time when they come back after their exams. Some subjects don't start the A2 course. We find that we've got so much to do, we need to, and so I'll be starting work with them in the lessons, but one of the other things I've done is encourage them to actually watch some films and blog about the philosophical and ethical aspects of those films. I've got them a box of DVDs that they can watch and given them some ideas, and that's kind of a new project. Again, if you look up a guy called Edutronic, by Chris Waugh, he's an English teacher in London, and he now actually teaches all of his English through blogging, because it means any articles that are written by his students, he can get lots of really fantastic feedback on that from other teachers and so on. We found that with the A-level blog this year, where I've been putting it out on Twitter. We've had other A-level teachers responding to the students, even university lecturers replying to the students, and then entering into that conversation. You know, what better and more genuine audience could you ask for than that? What also I think needs to be an important consideration is the idea of risk-taking. So many aspects of teaching are always involving an element of risk. I always think it needs to be a calculated risk. Anything at any time could possibly go wrong, and even if you never use technology and always use pen and paper, one student could stab the one next to them with a pen, so do we take pens away? It's always a calculated risk. I would suggest the first thing you need to check is whether your school has a social media policy or not. And I've always found in my school making the head teacher and staff aware of what we're doing in a very open and transparent way is very useful. What you do find is sometimes people don't understand exactly what you're doing, and you do need to share that with them. The best thing I would suggest is start blogging for yourself first and work out what you perceive the dangers to be and make sure that you cover them. The student blog, Talking Donkey RE, I'm in complete control of that. I write all of the articles on it. There is something to consider there about kind of obviously your time. And I generally now try to spend no more than half an hour a week on it. And when I first started, I was getting all consumed in it 2 or 3 hours, and there was kind of perhaps a secret journalist in there wanting to get out that never did. But that's, I think, your big consideration there. I also moderate any comments that are posted, and because there are some potentially controversial topics, I think that's important. For my professional blog, where I talk about my teaching practice, obviously you've got to be very much concerned with children's identity and child protection and those things. It would be something that I would always avoid in the same way that you do in any kind of publication. I also consider myself, will the head teacher read this? And that's always, if it's not appropriate that your colleagues can read it, then maybe it's not professional, and you need to think very carefully about that. Quite often, when I've written something, I'll forward it to the head teacher or someone on the SLT and say, have you read this? It brings together a few good ideas. The student blogs, there is a lot more to consider. I've made sure they're all anonymous. I actually use Blogger, which is tied into Google, but there are some different edu blogs. There are different blogs where you can only allow the class to see. There's so many different kind of products out there now, most of which are free. I use Blogger, which is, as I said, the Google one. I just have a single user login. They have one Google account that they all log into, seanstudent@gmail, and that means that they're not putting their own email account or anything like that in. When they finish a blog post, they only put their initials. There's no identifying name or anything like that. As soon as it's posted, it's emailed to me. I do check my email on my phone, so I do get that pretty quickly to see if there's anything horrific in it. As I said, it is always a calculated risk. I think there's a whole internet safety lesson that comes with it that's a bit of a bonus. And when we've talked about, when we're blogging about world religions and, Islam in particular, which is in the press a lot, if you are going to write something inflammatory, there is going to be consequences. And I think that's a massively important lesson for students to learn. And it ties then back into things they might write themselves personally on Facebook and Twitter, that actually in this day and age you can't get away with writing anything, you can't get away with hiding behind an online identity. You have got to be accountable for what you write. And I think there's a really serious and important lesson that actually by doing this you are tackling head on. As I said, we need to think about how we learn about offending people. We have this whole thing, Twitter rage, where someone makes a comment on Twitter and all of a sudden there is almost a mob mentality and a gang warfare almost that kind of goes on there. I think it's important to, again, it gives you a fantastic opportunity to talk about those things, from an ethical, moral point of view in your RE classroom. Religion can be provocative, it is controversial, and that's why I think you'll agree, that's why we love teaching the subject, because we can hit these issues head on, and we need to give our students the power really to write about them in a constructive way. Right, some of the benefits that I've found. I'm not relying on any school systems. I don't have to email our network guys and say, I'd really like you to put this one article on the website. I don't need to do that. I've got it all within my control. I can work on it inside school, outside school. I can even work it on my mobile. It for me really enables me to meet the students where they're at, which is online. It's interesting, when I introduced the blog to some of my sixth formers, loads of them said, well, yeah, I blog already. What do you blog about? Well, just nothing really. So it kind of gives them a bit of a purpose for the lifestyle in which they live. And also this idea of kind of using Twitter, which I'll come on to in a little bit, with students. Actually, they spend a huge amount of time online, and if you can in some way make some of that time a little bit more useful and productive, surely that is potentially a bonus. It means everything can be relevant and up to date. I can blog about something the night it happens, I was sat at home not really doing a lot the night that the last Pope, Pope Francis, was elected, and I put a blog post up there with actually a PowerPoint attached to it, and that was one of my most popular ever blog posts because it was used so much and was emailed around people all over the place because it is that relevant and up to date. We eventually got my PowerPoint emailed by the diocese about 2 weeks later. It enables you to host resources, and again, as you get more confident using things like Google Drive or maybe Dropbox, you can link those into your blog and actually have downloadable documents and so on. You can link it to your homework as well. So often I'm now, right, go to this particular blog post and that's your homework to write a summary or review or compare these two blog posts. And now I've kind of got a bank of appropriate resources, and say there's a whole section on abortion and euthanasia, and so one of the homeworks I do with my Year 10 students is go and pick 2 articles that you find interesting about abortion on the blog. I find that far better than just saying go and find 2 interesting articles about abortion on the internet, which is a vast and huge area. I regain some kind of control. And I think that's really important when we live in an age where we can just hit Google and the first thing that comes up, actually I'm regaining some kind of control of that. The other thing that I think is quite important is me and the RE department do actually have an online presence. I would love my school to have a bit more of an online presence, perhaps using Facebook and Twitter, because one of the most powerful things I was ever told is that regardless of whether you have an official Facebook page, whether you have an official school Twitter, you do have an online presence. People will be talking about your school. It might be students, it might be parents, it might be the public. They will be doing that on Facebook, they will be doing it on Twitter, and it's about how do you engage in that. A lot of teachers worry about what's being said about themselves on Twitter. There's part of me that kind of wonders, and I've had this discussion with Year 13s, where they said to me, well, no one would say anything about you on Twitter, sir, because they know that you use Twitter. And I don't know if that was any comfort or not about potentially even talking about other stuff, but I think there's so much debate and conversations to be had there. We might not like it, we might not think it's right, and there's got to be protection for teachers, but for schools alone, that online presence is already there. And the question is, are you going to engage with it or not? I do use Twitter with the students, and again, this is something you need to definitely check with your schools about how they want to use it. More and more schools are using it. When I first started using it, my school didn't really have a policy or a way in which it should be used. So one of the things I kind of wrote for myself were these 10 commandments. Don't use your personal account for school, don't use your school account for personal. It's just common sense. If you want to use Twitter for following celebrities and chatting with your mates and sharing photos from Saturday night, that's got to be different from your school one. Don't follow students back, there is no need to. You don't want to hear their news, they don't need to have you following them. It then also starts to cloud the judgment. It is better, I think, than Facebook, because it's the idea of following rather than being friends with, okay? Although I know Facebook now has pages where you're fans of. Are people fans of their RE teachers? I don't know. Don't just endlessly retweet, because that's a bit boring. Again, some people just tweet links to BBC News and so on. That's not going to engage the students. Again, be very careful what you retweet. You need to read it, check it, and make sure it's suitable. You wouldn't hand out a document in class without reading it. Why would you do that online? Also, don't be available 24/7. Believe it or not, it's okay to take some time off as a teacher, although some people would have you believe otherwise. Don't direct message students. The good thing about Twitter is it's completely transparent. If I do have a conversation with a student on Twitter, which is possible and I think completely reasonable, it's completely transparent and everyone can see it. A bit like if you have a conversation in a corridor rather than a closed room. Don't use long boring hashtags, it's not cool. However, there are lots of really useful hashtags. RE Teacher and RE Chat UK are brilliant for us RE teachers. If you post the link, why not tell the students why they should look at it? Why not tell them it's interesting? Who's it interesting to? GCSE, A-level? Don't assume just because you tweeted it and students follow you that they'll read it. Again, you are probably one of maybe 100, 200, 500 people that they follow. And even then they might not freely admit to following you. So don't assume they've read it. But I'm always quite surprised as to how many students have. Even last year, 2 years ago in my form, I had year 9 saying, "Oh, I saw you put that up, sir. Oh yeah, I read that article," which is a real surprise for me. Last of all, there's no need to be a boring tweeter just because you're being a teacher, just because you're being in our RE department. Okay, it's sometimes okay to say something a little bit fun, or a little bit fun picture. It shows that you are human, that you understand some of their stresses, and Twitter is a place where learning can be enjoyable. I have done a few presentations before on using Twitter and using blogs. Some of those videos, and as I said, I've kind of hyperlinked all of these. So if you want to learn more, if you want to find out more, or if you just want to hear me say this in a slightly different way, those links are all there. They're from various teach meets that happened around Essex and London. What I'm going to encourage you to do is early next week, because obviously I feel bad that I can't be there, but I'm based in Essex, East London, Essex and Upminster, and it's impossible for me to come and be with you today. But I know you've probably got loads of questions, and I know you've had some time built in for some discussion after this video, and I'm sure, or I hope, there's lots that you want to discuss and questions you've got. I'm more than happy for you to send me a message on Twitter. Probably best to use my professional account, just because it'd be easier for me, I'll be honest, which is iteachre. Email me, talkingdonkeyre@gmail.com, or if you want to do it by paper, I don't know how your day's working out. If you want to do it by paper and then send them to me, or one person send them all to me, I will go through and I will answer all of those questions for you, and I'll put them in a blog post which I'll email to Rhiannon and she can share with you. Okay? You've got access to this PowerPoint as long as you can use Google Documents wherever you are, which is tiny.cc Monmouth RE. I think the RE needs to be in capital letters, but you can try it and experiment with that. But I am, very conscious that it would be far better if I could be there with you and answer your questions and give you some more of my experiences. But thank you for listening today, and all my contact details are there, and please do get in touch. I have found that using Twitter and blogging has really transformed so much of my life as a teacher. It's made my lessons better. It's made my work-life balance has changed, because I admit that I sometimes spend too long on Twitter and reading people's blogs, and there's sometimes so much brilliant stuff to read. But on the other hand, it's given me marking techniques to make things better. It's given me techniques to improve self-assessment and peer assessment and all of those things. It's also allowed me to get involved in so many new and different projects and initiatives and meetings and groups, and all of that has been brilliant. At the end of the day, I always have to ask myself the question about who's it of benefit to, and sometimes it's of benefit to me, sometimes it's a benefit to the students, but really there's got to be a value to anything you do. And I have found this has been one of the most kind of transforming things to get involved with, and it is, a big part of many teachers' lives now. And maybe you'll find a way you can make your life better. I'm not suggesting you try and do everything that's here, although you might want to. You might want to pick one or two ideas, certainly to start with. That whole idea of walking before you run. There's lots of things that I would love to do more in the future, but I'm still learning. I'm still on that kind of journey as well. But hopefully that's given you a bit of an introduction to some of the advantages, some of the dangers. You do need to talk to your schools about what they're happy with, but don't let it just be this big danger of the great unknown. To engage and to embrace some of this new technology can be really worthwhile and can really help your students, not just in RE but beyond that, with their digital literacy and all of their social networking awareness, their internet safety. All of these things are vitally important, and maybe you can be the person that tackles some of that head on. So thank you ever so much for inviting me to speak. As I said, sorry I can't be with you there in person, but hopefully this video has been watchable, bearable, and I hope you have a brilliant day on your conference today, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much. Goodbye.